Hello everyone, my name is Natalie, and in this video I want to take you to not the beautiful and interesting side of Brussels here on the main square of Brussels, but I want to take you to a different side of Brussels. It's a darker past, and in particular it's World War II past. You might have been to Brussels, you might have walked right by these sites that we will see today, but you probably didn't know its history, its dark history during the Second World War. But first, before we go and see these sites, I want to give you a quick background on World War II in Belgium and in Brussels.
On the 10th of May 1940, the Germans entered Belgium to kick off their blitzkrieg. 18 days later, King Leopold III surrendered the country. Belgium would be under German military rule for more than 4 years. There barely was any actual fighting during that time, but that does not mean that life was easy for Belgians. There was not enough food, people in the cities were starving, young men and women were sent to Germany to work in the war industry, or worse, to fight on the Eastern Front, and many public and private buildings were requisitioned by the Germans. Brussels was the capital of occupied Belgium in northern France, administered by the German military, so not under direct Nazi rule. But these more extreme actors were of course also present in Brussels.
Nowadays there are still so many reminders of these dark years in Brussels, but you really need to know where to look. Now in this video I'll show you a few of these sites with an important World War II past.
We're just behind the Royal Palace, its gardens, very close to the Belgian Parliament, other government buildings, so an excellent location close to all the political action here in Brussels. The German occupiers agreed with this back in World War II. That's why this stately 19th century building to my right was requisitioned by the German army very early on in the occupation. They made it the headquarters of the occupation authority, so-called military administration in Belgium and northern France. Now before the war, this had been the headquarters of the public electricity company. It's only one of a few buildings in Brussels that was damaged during the liberation on September the 2nd, 1944. Early that morning, the Belgian resistance movement stormed the building. They knew Allied backup was arriving that same day, and they wanted to take the building themselves after 4 long and frustrating years of war and occupation. While most Germans had already retreated before the arrival of the liberating forces, there were still some Germans inside that morning who were taken prisoners. It's now the headquarters of a major bank. Our next stop is also very centrally located and is hard to miss with its golden dome from almost anywhere in Brussels. It's the Palace of Justice of Brussels. It's the most important courthouse of Belgium. It has been under renovation and in scaffolding for about 20 years now, but it should be ready in the very near future, or so they say. It might not be the most beautiful, charming building, but its sheer size makes it very impressive. Megalomaniac even, perhaps. And I'm not exaggerating, it's the largest building that was built in the 19th century. It's even bigger than St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. But besides being a huge, monumental building, it was also the favorite building of a certain Adolf Hitler. He liked it that much that he sent his architect, Albert Speer, here to copy the design. He wanted to have his own copy in a new city he was planning in his Third Reich, Germania. You can definitely understand why someone like Adolf Hitler would feel attracted to this gigantic Roman/Greek temple. But the Justice Palace was also quite badly damaged during the liberation of Brussels. The Germans kept their archives here and they set fire to it before they fled the city. The dome, the cupola, collapsed. It's one of the only buildings that suffered this scale of destruction. It did get restored quite quickly after the war, a lot quicker actually than its current renovation for sure. All over Europe, also in Brussels, you can find the so-called Stolpersteine, or tumbling stones in English, like here in the Rue de la Régence. These are all a small reminder of a person who was arrested here by the Nazis or the Gestapo and usually sent to a concentration camp in Germany or Poland, many unfortunately who never came back. There's one neighborhood in particular where you can find many, way too many, the Marollen neighborhood. The Marollen was a refuge for many Jewish immigrants, refugees from Germany or Poland before the war broke out in Belgium. Unfortunately for many, it was also the place where they were arrested when Brussels was occupied. Their names and fate are engraved into a small brass plate on the top of each stolperstein, in front of the house where they were arrested from. Many people have passed by these houses on Avenue Louise 1,000 times without knowing the history. During the occupation, this was the building where you really didn't want to be taken. It's one of the headquarters of the Gestapo in Brussels. Gestapo was the secret police and, without a doubt, some of the most feared representatives of Nazi Germany. If you were believed to be part of the resistance, you were taken to this building for questioning, often including torture. You were locked up in the basement before you were sent off to a prison camp, or worse. In the basement of this building, they found some writings on the walls, messages, goodbyes, signatures that were written by people who were locked up there. A truly heroic story took place here as well. On January the 20th, 1943, Belgian-born RAF fighter pilot Jean de Longchamp mounted a solo attack on these headquarters. He flew his Hawker Typhoon at a very low altitude straight towards this building while firing his 20mm cannons before returning to England. These resistance organizations had safe houses all over Brussels, where they often hid, for instance, Jews or Allied pilots that had crashed. This house was one of those safe houses. This one, in particular, of the Independent Front, which was a left-wing faction of the Belgian resistance that was affiliated to the Communist Party. The Independent Front was highly active in preventing large numbers of Belgian men being forced to leave the country to work as forced laborers in Germany by hiding them. They ran sabotage operations, escape routes, false document service, distributed 250 different underground publications. One of these was the fake version of major newspaper Le Soir. In the former photo engraving workshop where the photos for this fake newspaper were made, there is now the Museum of the Resistance. It has documents, artifacts relating to the different categories and components of the resistance, such as underground press, armed and civil resistance, intelligence networks, escape lines, Jew rescue networks, etc.